1000%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yeah.
Race has always played a role in American democracy, which is why Race in America is one of the pillars of the Vanderbilt Project on Unity and American Democracy. The project explores the historical and present-day impacts of racism in all its forms and ways to work toward a more equal and just society. Summer Ali, co-chair of the Unity Project, has devoted her career to bringing people together to move towards peace.
I'm a conflicts resolutions practitioner, and I work at the intersection of national security, economic development, and human rights. I had the opportunity when I was at Vanderbilt to meet Archbishop Tutu and his family, which led me to be mentored by him in South Africa on a number of topics and range of different areas, including truth and reconciliation. And that also further inspired me as someone who grew up as a Palestinian, Syrian American Muslim woman in the South to want to dedicate my career to figuring out how we transcend divides and bring people together in order to move towards peace. We had hundreds of years of slavery. We also have an indigenous population that we didn't treat fairly and that we haven't treated fairly, and it gets back to truth and reconciliation. Have we properly acknowledged our truth? Have we properly reconciled with it? And I think that that is a continuous process. Now, what I see is a lot of times people talking about racism on the individual level and not enough conversation about racism on the systemic level. Some people, when I use that language, get turned off. And instead of backing away, I lean in and ask, why? Why is it turning you off? And what I tend to hear back is because I feel like you're calling me a racist. And so then it's, why do you feel that way? Why do you feel I'm calling you a racist by talking about a system that's riddled with racism and bias? How about we work together to fix it and to make it better rather than just denying it? These are complex problems, but by ignoring them, we only make them worse. Criminal justice reform is a good example, where we saw bipartisan criminal justice reform. Embedded in that was addressing and is continuing to address systemic racism in the prison system.
A brief from Pew Charitable Trusts states that, quote, by the year 2000, Black people made up almost half of the state prison population, but only about 13% of the U.S. population. And although a wave of changes to sentencing and corrections policies over the past 2 decades has helped lessen disparities in federal and state prisons, Black adults were still imprisoned at 5 times the rate for white adults in 2020.
One of the things I learned in office is about how the criminal justice system works. You know, most of us have the good fortune or blessing to not really interact with the criminal justice system a lot. And I realized along the way, like, how little I understood about the judicial system. And in the process, so one of the things I learned is I became convinced that not for everybody, but for some people, our sentences are just way too long. And we tried to begin looking at that near the end of my time. I would have liked to have worked on that a little bit more if I had actually understood how the system worked better. I came to be convinced after time that we had a lot of people serving very long sentences that I'm not certain it was in the best interest of society for them to be serving sentences that long.
I'm very excited about this event because we have Governor Bill Haslam and Ms. Sentoya Brown Long together in public at a public event for the first time since their paths collided dramatically in 2019.
At the age of 16, Sentoya Brown was convicted of murder and robbery, resulting in a life sentence. Her case gained national attention after several high-profile celebrities expressed outrage over her sentence. In January 2019, Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam commuted Brown's life sentence, leading to her release in August of the same year.
The hard thing in Sentoya's case was when I started looking into this, I'm really near the very end of my time, and I realized there's several Sentoyas, if not more, out there in the system. And the only reason I knew about Sentoya was because she had gotten all this media attention. So the question is then, what do you do? Is it fair to treat her differently because all these super media personalities from Kim Kardashian to Snoop Dogg to LeBron James had tweeted about her? Is it fair to treat her differently? Or is it also fair to leave her in there when you know it's not the right thing to do?
In 2022, the Vanderbilt Unity Project hosted a discussion on criminal justice reform featuring former Governor Haslam and Sentoya Brown Long.
I'd made a big mistake as governor. As governor, you have the power to grant clemency or pardon or exoneration even is almost total. Unless you're getting paid money for it, you can do whatever you think is best, okay? And I had gotten some advice when I went into office that said, everybody and their brother is going to be coming up to you asking for a pardon or getting some taken, their DUI from college taken off their record, whatever. Don't do it. Just wait till your last few months in office and then you won't be being besieged by people. And I said, that sounds smart. And that was not smart. It was a big mistake because you had this flood of things that came to you and you thought, I can be smart enough to figure this out. When they bring it, I'll say, okay, this person should get off, that person should. You thought, I can figure all that out, and you can't.
Obviously, I'm a proponent for clemency, but when you think about it, this is one person, and you have...
Sure.
Clemency is not the answer.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Parole
Scale
reform,
doesn't work.
Yeah, parole reform is the answer.
Right.
I mean, even like on clemency, you have the parole board that acts as this barrier. So for many people, it's you file a petition for clemency, you just hope and pray that somebody can get it to the governor because it most likely is going to stop at the parole board.
One of the things the governor does is appoint the parole board. And you come into office brand new and you take on a lot of assignments. And when you're first appointing parole board members, you don't sit down and think, what's your view of the length of sentences and the ability for people to be rehabilitated in prison? Walk me through your philosophy of that. You don't really have all those conversations. But you realize how much discretion they have. And so when you're appointing somebody who has a lot of discretion, you need to think about, okay, what are their views on a lot of these issues? I didn't have a well-developed philosophy of how I looked at parole. I had never really interacted with the criminal justice system. I didn't know what I thought. And it's not like in your first years you have a lot of time to go off by yourself and read and develop that philosophy. So my point would be the governor has that, and I think it's better to be with the governor than anywhere else. But he or she takes a while to think about, well, what kind of person do I want on that board? And I thought, well, I need some really good citizens on there. But I didn't think enough about what's my philosophy around parole?
Because there are different approaches to parole boards. And,
Sure.
and one approach to parole board is to have experts who know about treatment programs, who can assess risk, and who can really individualize the evaluation of the individual, as opposed to people who are good citizens, but nonetheless don't know any of that stuff.
Right.
And you might get a very different decision depending on which type of person you have on the parole board.
I look at it as trying to continually change push the trajectory in a different direction through who you put in charge of prisons and who they hire, et cetera. But it takes a long time to move a big ship like a state.
I feel like there need to be more people who are actually impacted by these systems to have a voice at the table. We need to have committees. We need to have, and when I say committees, I mean committees where changes are actually implemented after those suggestions are made. We need to have people who are performing the audits that aren't just other people from other prisons or who are already in the system, but some people who don't really have a connection to TDOC doing these audits.
And the committees would include prisoners.
Absolutely,
Yes.
they should.